And here we go. Hello, Ripple Out, and thank you so much everyone for joining us today. My name is Neve McQuillan, and our Ripple Out conversation is a very special one. It's with Elena Aguilar. Elena is an author and the founder and president of Bright Morning. So welcome, Elena. It's wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, Neve. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So Elena is the founder and president of Bright Morning, and I'm going to read your vision statement just because it's so cool. So Bright Morning is an international education, coaching, and consulting firm that exists to bring new learning practices to organizations that aspire to interrupt inequities, build resilient communities, and heal and transform the world. I love that because you have so much in there, and I think it probably speaks to so many educators and why they're in education. So Elena started her work as an educator, then an instructional coach and a leadership coach. And I was fortunate enough to come across Elena's work about 5 years ago when I became a staff development teacher. And I was working with teams, and Baltimore County Public Schools introduced us to Elena's work, and I jumped on the art of coaching teams. It transformed the work that I did with my teams, and I credit so much of the success that I had in my school to the work I did with Elena. And I think one of the things that I love the most about your work, Elena, is how you said what was so, you know, it's like there were so many things in the work that I did was like, is anybody else experiencing this? It's like, this is really, or is it just me? And you just like laid it out there, and it's like, oh, thank you. It was just sort of like getting oxygen every time you wrote something like that. So thank you for that gift you have given me and all the people that I've had the opportunity to work with and all the other people out there. So the very first question I'd like to ask you is, what prompts you to do your work?
What prompts me to do my work is love. I'm realizing I have said for a long time that I'm motivated by social justice. And in the last year or so, as I wrote my next book, Coaching for Equity, I realized that there's a distinction for me between justice and liberation. And justice is necessary and urgent, and it is part of the path towards liberation. But liberation is ultimately what I want to be creating and contributing towards. And liberation is characterized by love. And so when I think about the specific people in my life who motivate me, my child, my husband, myself as a young child, myself now, my younger brother, my mother, my grandparents, what comes up for me stronger than anything is love. And it is a desire, a yearning for all of us to be seen in our full humanity, inclusive of and outside of our identity markers. And that brings me back again to love. And so I feel actually quite awkward saying that because it's not in my usual lexicon. I'm sort of much more, it's just a new word, a new phrase for me to be claiming, but I am realizing that's what motivates me.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And I can understand how that can feel new in your lexicon. So what does love offer and provide for people who read your books and who in turn are taught by people who read your books?
I know that all of us human beings deep down crave meaningful connection with each other. We want to be understood. We want to be seen. We want to be able to be vulnerable with each other. We want to talk about our mistakes. We want to share our successes. We want others to appreciate us. What we want, again, this is so weird for me to be saying this. It feels very corny, but I'm saying it anyway. We want love. And actually, I also know that we want to be able to express love to others more consistently, more powerfully. And I know that many of us don't have the resources and the tools. We don't have the tools. We were not taught how to communicate. We were not taught about our own emotions. We weren't taught about how to navigate the emotions of others or how to respond to others when they have strong emotions. And so my work and my business really is focused on supporting people to understand and acquire these tools, these essentially communications tools, tools for self-understanding, tools to understand others, so that we can have better relationships, so that we can experience the kind of understanding and love that I know we all want.
You know, hearing you say that, Elena, I'm going through my head all the different presentations I've done, and I shared with you before we started our conversation about how I have used so much of your work in the presentations that I have done, because I moved on to being coordinator of professional learning. And what I've noticed when I bring your work to people, they might come into the presentation a little bit sort of like agitated or awkward, you know, and then and their minds are someplace else, and you can see that they want to be using their laptops or their phones. And I start the work, I launch it, and within usually maybe about 9 to 13 minutes, there's a quiet in the room. And I think what it is that people are getting that they're being heard and they're being understood, and there's a safe space for them to understand who they are and know who they are. And your work provides that for people.
Mm. That's great to hear.
I'm curious, you know, when you started talking about your responses and you were a little bit hesitant in it, what I'm hearing is that perhaps there are beliefs about the world or beliefs that you hold about yourself that you have to navigate in order to be able to do the work that you want to do. Can you tell me something about that? What might those beliefs be?
Well, there are definitely beliefs that are right below everything I do. I mean, for everybody there are. All of our actions emerge from beliefs, whether we're conscious of it or not. There's always underlying beliefs that when we are really effective and empowered, we're conscious of. And so we know which beliefs we're acting on. So I would say some of the underlying beliefs are some of those that I already shared with you, that we human beings desire, we crave, we yearn for connection and love and community, and that I think we just don't know how to do it. Like another belief is human beings love to learn. We love learning when the conditions are right, when the conditions are good, when we can feel accepted, when we know we can make mistakes, when we can say we disagree with things. We love to learn, and I think that we want to learn. Since my books came out and I've started sharing them around the world, I've been surprised at times in a wonderful way by the reception that they've had and by how they've resonated. I remember shortly after The Art of Coaching came out, I found out that it was being used in communities in Nairobi, in the informal settlements, in some of the most challenging educational settings in the world. And I learned that the Kenyan coaches who were using The Art of Coaching were finding it completely relevant to their context. And I was so surprised, and I was thrilled because I hadn't done work in education outside of the San Francisco Bay Area. And I was just thrilled that in the informal settlements in Nairobi, that my work was relevant and meaningful. And the woman who told me this, who was the leader of an organization in Nairobi doing this work, she said, you know, what you're messaging is a message of kindness and compassion and humility, and that's universal. And I was so grateful for that insight, and that's what I have found. And I think, and I tell people, you know, when this work is resonating with you and you're grateful for my work, it's a reflection on who you are and what you want in the world. Is that people have received it really well and do find a lot of resonance with it. And I often tell people what that's reflecting is something in you. It's about who you are and who you want to be and what your values are and what your core beliefs are about who we are as humans and what we're doing here and what we do in schools. So I think there's just been a lot of a lot of resonance with the ideas. And I invite people, I encourage people to sort of own part of that. And so what they find meaningful in my work, to own that actually as part of themselves, and to remember that that's coming from themselves as well.
Mm. So that's a gift that can reverberate in many ways, because people can bring that back into their classrooms and into the work that they're doing with people. So I noticed in the emails that you have been sending out since the beginning of COVID, and even before that too, with your Bright Morning organization, is that you're very vulnerable and you tell the truth. You're very candid. That's a word that you used recently, which reflects my experience of reading the books, that you were just able to say what was so. So what possibilities does being vulnerable offer through your work?
It offers connection with others. So when I first started coaching, when I was for so many years as a coach, I felt really lonely and isolated, because I felt like I'm struggling so much and nobody else is talking about how hard this is. And sometimes when I would try to talk to others, just a few others, I didn't get a lot of, they weren't vulnerable. And I walked away from conversations feeling like, well, great, I'm obviously like a really bad coach, and why don't I know how to do this better, and what's wrong with me? And it feels, being vulnerable feels authentic to me, and I don't want to live a life where I'm constantly putting on fronts and masks and pretensions. It's not human. It's not real. It doesn't bring me, I want connection with people. I want deep, meaningful connection. I want to sit down and have honest conversations about, what are you struggling with? What's hard for you in this moment? And where are you getting inspiration and insight and connection and love and meaning? And I know that's, I need to model that. I remember how the impact I had on my students. I taught middle school, when I would be honest with kids about, hey, I struggled as a middle school student. I struggled as an immigrant. I struggled with, growing up in a household where there was economic insecurity. I was raised by a single mother. All these, when I would share that with my students, and they would look at me and they would say, we could be like you. I taught predominantly low income students of color in Oakland, California. That had a big impact on them. And I always thought, what if, I never had role models as a kid for people in positions of power, or even there were, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, there weren't writers who looked like me or came from my background. I had no role models, for so many things. And so I hope that by being fully human and honest and candid, whether that is as a coach or teacher, or now as a business leader, as a person who is, I never thought I'd be in this category of being a small business owner who has to lay people off. And that's where I am now. And it's been agonizing.
Yeah.
But what's the point of not being honest and sharing? It doesn't do anything for me. It doesn't, being a human is hard, and being a human and compounded with loneliness is just, there's no point.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Because like I said, your vulnerability just always speaks to me in your writings. So another thing I've noticed in your emails is that you were saying that you always led your business in response to responding to feedback. So you really value the feedback that everybody gives you. And that is certainly something that we value as teachers. So what impact does leading your business in this way have for you?
Everything I've done has been in service of others. And so in order to be effectively in service, I have to ask for feedback. I have to find, what's working, how did this work? Whether it's a day-long workshop that I facilitate, or a meeting with my team, or I'm always asking for what's working. What did you appreciate about what I did? What did you learn? And what would you like to see different? It's important that we ask for positive feedback as well, so we know what's working, so we continue doing what is working. So I've gotten so much wonderful feedback that my vulnerability is meaningful and that my stories are meaningful also. And you just shared that with me, and that made my heart like just burst. I mean, that's like for me, I want to write stories, and my new book that's coming out in August is full of stories. It's about 2/3 of it is just stories. I really had fun playing with the genre and
Mhm.
pushing the boundaries of an education book, because it's got chapter after chapter of stories. And that's really what I want to write more of. And so that feedback, including what you're sharing with me, helps me say, okay, this is the right path to go on. This is what my heart is calling me to go on. And I'm getting good feedback that that's the right path to go on. So we want corrective feedback in a sense. We want to know, like, what should I stop doing? But what should I do more of?
Yeah. I love that you say you're listening to your heart, because I think to be guided by that in your work, that's a very pure thing, and we're connecting with the universe by doing that. So
Mhm.
yeah, I know you have your new book coming out in July, Coaching for Equity. And one of the goals in writing that book, you said, was that you wanted to cultivate resilience and you wanted to work for equity. So what values are you honoring by publishing this book?
So I have an activity that I do with people to help them identify their 3 core values. And it's actually one that anybody can download from my website. And my 3 core values have remained the same for 12 years now. And those are compassion, justice, and community. And I would say this new book is a representation of those 3 values. I hope it will create more compassionate communities and more compassion between people. And I hope it will contribute to creating a more just and equitable school system and world. Um, and I also, as I just mentioned, I think it's a reflection of my value of a more recent iteration of a value, which is to, let's see, the words that I use are to include myself more in the picture and include myself more in the story. And what that means is really listen to my heart, not listen to my mind and what it tells me, like, this would be a really good book to write, and you should really do this, and you should do that, and this would be a good workshop. But actually to listen to, what am I being called to do? What am I aching to do? And as I just told you, that is telling stories, and that's what is in this new book. So I'm working on integrating my sort of deepest desires and passions, and incorporating more of that into what I do.
Mm. So I'm prompted to ask the question, what do you need now that you don't yet have?
Mm, wow, that's a good question.
Is it? Yeah, I love that one.
What do I need? I need to give myself like radical permission. I need to say to myself, I need to be tough with myself, I think. And I need to say, so in December, just this last December 2019, I turned 50. And that felt like a really big number that I've been anticipating for years. And there are things that I want to do with my life that I have not yet done. And those are different creative expressions, and they include writing and writing in different genres. And I keep sort of putting it off. I keep saying, well, once I've got this piece done, once I have that done, once my business is in this place, once it's more stable. And I have to stop doing that. And I have to say, I have to create space and time. Before COVID-19 hit, my plan for the rest of this year was to spend a lot more time doing that kind of writing. And now I've sort of said no, but things are collapsing, and I have to insist with myself that I honor this need that I have and write some of these other stories that haven't yet been expressed. Yeah, that's a good question.
So what risk do you have to take in doing that and taking that action?
I think it is a risk around being willing to do something that I don't know if anything will happen with it. Like I might fail in the sense that, let's say I write a book of essays, or I write something that's more narrative, memoir. I need to be okay with taking the risk that I write it and it doesn't get published or nobody reads it. I mean, that's what I have to take. That's the risk I have to take. Because the other thing is, I know that I could keep writing education books and they would do well because they have. And I do also love writing those. And, but I need to write other things. My spirit is calling me to write other things. There's other stories that I want to tell.
I can hear that. I can hear that. Well, so if you got what you wanted today, what would that look like?
Oh, you're good. What would that look like? See, if I was coaching me, and then I would be like, look, Elena, did you notice how you just sighed with relief? Like our bodies give us cues, what we want and need. I would be able to do work for like 3 hours a day, or maybe only 3 days a week. And then I'd have big chunks of my day and time. I'd be able to get up in the morning and do my morning routines. And then I'd be able to come and write probably from 6 in the morning until 9 in the morning. And I would just be able to write, and I wouldn't have to respond to email or messages or anything else. And I could just get into my creative world. That's what, yeah.
Lovely. I can feel that. So final question of the day, Elena. What do you want to savor?
What do I want to savor? That's a good question. Ever since the pandemic began or really hit us, I have been finding that I've been savoring. I went to the grocery store this morning for the first time in 5 weeks. My husband's been doing all the shopping, and this morning I just really wanted to go. I wanted to pick out the cheeses that I wanted, and I thought, like, I want to do something that feels kind of normal, and I walked out crying because it wasn't normal. It was really weird, and it was hard to talk to, muffled through my mask, and everybody is like jumping sort of back from each other, and it was just really and then I walked out and there was a homeless person, and I just thought, that's when I started crying, because I was like, oh my God, I have so much privilege, and this is just, and it's still painful and sad, and I miss the bustle of the normal market. And I just feel like I have been savoring things like having a little bit more time with my family, and the simple things of sitting outside and not hearing as much traffic. So I want to savor more of the mundane things, and, maybe 2 years from now that we can go to the grocery store and bustle around, and like, I want to be able to reach across someone and grab for the perfect ripe avocado right in front of them. I want physical proximity with strangers. Mm-hmm. That sounds really weird.
I get it.
I want to be able to pass someone on the street and not, jump into the oncoming traffic because I'm afraid of, I never knew that I took that for granted. And so every day I'm thinking of, what are the things that I'm taking for granted without going too far into the worlds of sort of fear, because it's really close by for me. And so just savoring my feet are warm. I don't have an earache. It's sunny outside today. My cat is healthy. My husband is doing his thing. My kid is playing the piano, like the mundane, ordinary joys of life.
Yeah, I get that. I feel the same way. And I do have one more question. What else is there here for you to say today?
This has been a great conversation. I want to have these kind of conversations. Every question you asked, I felt like I wanted to know the answer from you.
Oh, thank you.
And and I want to know from other people. I want to remember these questions. And I think, I want to have, perhaps along with the sort of fragility of life and relationships, is I want to have meaningful connections and conversations with people. Like, I never want to have small talk again. I've never enjoyed small talk, although I do like talking about weather for some reason, but never enjoyed small talk. And I want to have these kind of conversations. They're they're meaningful.
They are. Well, Annie, this has just been, oh, wonderful, just wonderful. I feel like I'm in your living room and I feel like we could talk for hours more. So thank you so much for your time and for the heart and authenticity you brought to this conversation.
Thank you, Neve.
Bye-bye.
Bye.